Okay. Okay. This is the final version. The rate is pretty heavy, but I'll try. See if this works. Okay, we'll add this and present. Oh, we already did present. These, the other one. There we go. All right, we try this. It's a little bit fast, or maybe I should slow it down. Maybe slow it down. Oh, here I go. I'll just slow it down. Maybe it works. It's probably better if it's slower anyway, right? Just wait for everything to cooperate. Computer. There we go. Slow it down a little bit. Okay. Try this. Oh, I have to lower the volume here. Because otherwise it'll be like big echo. Okay, try this.
Identifying ancestral DNA relationships. Y chromosome and mtDNA haplogroups form ancient lineages identifying where and who everyone came from. Known human history. The study of ancient civilizations is a very important part of knowing who we all are. Ancient sources give us a glimpse into what life was like and what the challenges were. There were clearly many challenges since there was always some ruler attempting to achieve dominance over all the people. Even so, life was able to take place not too dissimilar from our own lives, even going off to school. To be clear, we are not so different from each other. We are actually closely related to each other.
This is already published. I'm just playing it. It's already published, but it's up, but it's probably not available to see yet. But it'll be there in a matter of a few days, a couple of days.
Each other. Still, each of us has a single paternal lineage and a single maternal lineage that can be traced all the way back to its origin. We humans have 3 main paternal lineage groups, and we also have 3 main maternal lineage groups. The paternal haplogroup lineages are traced by way of the non-recombinant male Y chromosome, and the maternal haplogroup lineages are traced by way of the non-recombinant mitochondrial DNA of the mother. So, we have 3 main groups of paternal ancestors, and we have 3 main groups of maternal ancestors. For the paternal haplogroup ancestor lineages, its A, B, C, D, and E is one group, F, G, H, I, and J is the other group, and K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, and T is the remaining group. The maternal haplogroup ancestor lineages are L, M, and N along with additional subdivisions. There's a little confusion as to the ordering of the human genetic haplogroups. In the paternal ancestry, they have the African group first as the most original genome, then the Semitic group, and then they have the Eurasian group as the youngest least original group. But with the mitochondrial lineage, they have the African group first, then the Eurasian group next, and they the Semitic group as the last. This doesn't make sense for the ethnicity of the maternal lineages not to match the ethnicity of the paternal lineages. It's not a problem if all the lineages existed at the same time. It is a problem if it is purported to be a progression of lineages, as in the out of Africa claim. You can't have Africans producing Semitic males along with Eurasian females who in turn somehow produce Eurasian males along with Semitic females. This is nonsense number 1. It's crackpot science. There are other problems as well. They have the Neanderthal and the Denisovans as being archaic humans which are said to precede the African lineages. The problem with that is that Neanderthals and Denisovans are both found in Eurasia, not Africa. Another problem is that Neanderthals have more in common with Eurasians, especially Asians, and not Africans. Denisovans are somehow a mix of African and Eurasians. Then the big elephant in the room is that all the ancient civilizations are all contemporaneous with each other to begin with. Before I explain how the ordering is a problem, I need to highlight and show what we can easily verify. There is one human haplogroup lineage that we can positively identify. The priests of Israel were all supposed to be directly paternally descended from Aaron of the tribe of Levi. Accurate genealogy is very important to the Israelites and to our investigation. The mandate was for every descendant of Aaron to tell each of their male offspring that they were the only legitimately designated priests of Israel. No one else was allowed to make this claim of Aaronic priesthood. It turns out that among everyone claiming to be a direct paternal descendant of Aaron, almost half have a marker called the Cohen modal haplotype. It's J1p58. No other haplotype even comes close to being a direct descendant of Moses' brother Aaron. Not the J2, not the I1 or I2, not the EGR or Q. Or T. The positive identification of the Cohen modal haplotype is key to understanding who's who. It identifies the descendants of Aaron, the tribe of Levi, the sons of Jacob and the descendants of Abraham, which includes both Jews and Arabs. It distinguishes the Hebrews and descendants of Abraham from all the other Semitic people such as the Elamites, Assyrians, Arameans, and Lydians, which are all the other original ancient Semitic civilizations. It identifies all the Semitic civilizations as being of the haplogroups F, G, H, H, I, and J. We should already know that the African haplogroups are A, B, and E. The C haplogroup is found almost exclusively in Eurasia, especially Western Asia. The D haplogroup is found in Asia, although it is also found in and near Africa. The most intriguing thing concerns specifically the C paternal haplogroup. A, B, and E are found in Africa while C is exclusive to Western Asia for the most part. The interesting thing about C is that it shares an SNP marker with everyone who is not African. Those who subscribe to the out of Africa theory suggest that the C paternal haplogroup is the ancestor of everyone outside of Africa. This is a claim that the African civilizations gave rise to all the other civilizations that are contemporaneous with them. The problem is that the Lydians, Arameans, Assyrians, Elamites, Hebrews, and Arabs all existed at the same time as Egypt and Kush. All the Eurasian civilizations also existed at that time. We can't assume the conclusion of Africans being the oldest lineages when all the ancient civilizations existed at the same time. There were the ancient inhabitants of Italy, the Thracians of Greece, Siberians, Asians, Medes, Gomer in Europe and India, and the Javan Mediterranean Sea people in the known cities of Elisha, Dodon, and Kittim and Tarshish. All of these existed at the time Egypt existed, so there are a lot of things in the supposed academic consensus not adding up very well. SNP genetic markers. There are genetic markers that tie the three main paternal groups together. They are referred to as single nucleotide polymorphisms or SNP markers and sometimes called SNPs. The SNP marker that ties the Africans with the rest of the world is called the CF-XDE marker. This is a marker that the C paternal haplogroup has while all other Africans do not have it, not even the D or E haplogroups have it. The C haplogroup is the one found almost exclusively in Western Asia, although it also went into Europe and as far as the Americas, the Pacific Islands and Australia. Of course, the paternal haplogroup lettering assumes an out-of-Africa scenario. This is the reason why it roots all the lineages in the haplogroup of Africans, but it's just wrong to assume that the Africans produced everyone else when they all existed at the same time. There is also reason to believe that the African lineages are the youngest and least original to begin with. We need to find a scenario that fits all the migration patterns in history and all the historical records. The SNP marker that ties the Semitic populations with the Eurasians is called the IJK SNP marker. Remember that J is the haplogroup that has been positively identified as the descendants of Abraham, who in turn is descended from Eber of the Hebrews and Arphaxad. The question would be why they all share a marker with Eurasians. Again, it's not that Eurasians descended from Semitic populations, because that's just silly science. It's that both Eurasians and Semitics have a common ancestor. Eurasians had been around just as long or longer than the Semitic nations previously mentioned. These SNP markers are a big deal since it is absolute genetic evidence. We need to be sure that we understand what is going on here. Did all the ancient civilizations exist at the same time, or did one group of Africans produce Semitics, with Eurasian females, which in turn produced Eurasians, with Semitic females? That claim would also mean that the African L maternal mitochondrial DNA produced the Eurasian maternal mitochondrial DNA descendants first, with Semitic males, which then produced the Semitic maternal mitochondrial DNA descendants last, with Eurasian males. This is a fatal flaw for the supposed consensus, also keeping in mind that Neanderthals have more in common with Eurasians than Africans. The nonsense of the out of Africa scenario completely destroys itself. We need to rely on written ancient historical texts. All the ancient civilizations existed at the same time. They have many separate records of the same events. We need a coherent explanation of what happened that fits perfectly with known human history. We know each and every original ancient civilization because we have records of them all, and each one of them has an identifying haplogroup designation. The only way that they can all exist at the same time while having SNP markers that tie them together is if the ordering of the paternal haplogroups is all wrong. There must be a way to reconcile everything perfectly because it is genetics that we are talking about. Genetics doesn't lie. What if the Abrahamic ancestor that has the IJK-SNP marker was the oldest son of the Semitic common ancestor, Shem, who was also the brother of the Eurasian common ancestor, Japheth? This oldest Semitic son of Shem, Arphaxad, can share a marker with his uncle Japheth. That is entirely possible. Now what if the marker was lost when Arphaxad's brother Elam of the Elamites was born while still retaining another HIJK-SNP marker? That is entirely possible. What if Ashur, the Assyrian ancestor, lost the previous marker when he was born with another GHIJK-SNP marker? What if Aram, the ancestor of the Arameans, lost the previous marker when he was born retaining yet another FGHIJK-SNP marker? Now what if the ancestor of the C paternal haplogroup retained the CF-SNP marker that was then lost to all his younger brothers and cousins? This is entirely possible, and it fits with the known human history perfectly. This means that the main haplogroup designations are assigned exactly backwards. Now let's see what really happened. Remember the C paternal haplogroup all by itself in Europe, Mesopotamia, Asia, America, Australia, and the Pacific Islands? That ancestor would have had to have been some kind of very great king early on when history began. What great king was there in Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, who had a common ancestor with Africans? This can't be just any king. It must be a king from the beginning of civilization. This is very important. C is related to Africans. He's right in the middle of Africans A, B, C, D, and E. There must have been a very great king, I mean really great king, from the beginning who had very many sons. Can anyone think of a name? Think. How about Nimrod, the son of Cush? Boom! It can't possibly be anyone else who was the great ancestor of every male descendant around the world with a C paternal haplogroup which is closely related to the A and B found in Africa. Okay, we have been able to positively identify the J paternal haplogroup and the C paternal haplogroup with known recorded human history. This is going to explain a lot. For decades, historians, anthropologists, and genealogists have been going back and forth on what the identity of the Olmec population was. They clearly had Asian features at times, and sometimes they had features resembling Africans. No, there has never been a consensus that they were somehow related to Africans. That's just silly. Humph, says the consensus. They look more Polynesian, but were they Polynesian? Well, in America the main paternal haplogroups are Q and C3. The Polynesians have the C2 paternal haplogroup. This means that the Olmecs could easily have shared the same common ancestor Nimrod with Polynesians, giving them a similar appearance. You think? Identifying the northern Eurasian nations. Everything has to fit perfectly since we are dealing with genetic evidence. We have an isolated Hamitic king with unique Y DNA in Mesopotamia early on whose father is Cush, and there is an extensive signature of his Y DNA throughout the area and beyond. We have the Cohen modal haplotype identifying the oldest Semitic lineage IJ. The I haplogroup is included with J since they too share the IJK marker of their great-uncle Japheth, who is the ancestor of all Eurasians. This ancestor produced 7 civilizations known as the Northern Nations, which are all under the KSNP marker, absent the IJK-SNP marker, which includes the KLMNOPQRS and T haplogroup designations. These are the 7 nations north of Mesopotamia and their haplogroups by way of the migration patterns and process of elimination. They have been named as Tubal of early Italy, K, Tiras of the Thracians of early northern Greece, L, Meshech in Siberia, N, Magog in East Asia, O, Made of the Medes, PQ, Gomer of Europe and northern India, R, and Javan of the Mediterranean as stated earlier, T. M and S are closely associated, and they are closely associated with the K haplogroup of Tubal also in the same area of South Asia. Some lineages separated so long ago that they have become separate lineages. The M and S, for example, are from 2 sides of the same island of Papua New Guinea, while the K is from the surrounding area nearby and in Australia. They probably all belong to the same original K haplogroup. The other paternal haplogroups nearby are the Hamitic C2 and C4 of Nimrod, so it's safe to say that the M and S belong to the Eurasian K haplogroup. This is basically all of the northern nations and their migrations. One of the nations that traveled far and wide was the Medes. There is an interesting story told of Madai, the ancestor of the Medes. He asked to marry one of the daughters of Shem. That would be one of the daughters who was under the Semitic N designation of maternal mitochondrial DNA. This means that everywhere the Medes went, there was a Semitic mtDNA lineage that followed them. In America, it is the mtDNA haplogroup. In Europe, it is X and W. These letter designations can be quite confusing. The AX and W mtDNA lineages are from the same root lineage. In America, the mtDNA haplogroup lineages are A, D, C, and D. The mtDNA lineage is Semitic. The mtDNA haplogroup is another separate Semitic lineage from the Middle East, clearly not the same daughter of Shem who married Madai. It may have crossed the Pacific to reach the Americas. The C and D mtDNA haplogroups are Eurasian from the daughters of Japheth. Another interesting thing is that 95% of Western European maternal mtDNA is Semitic. The Eurasian mtDNA haplogroup is more toward the east side of India and in the north in Siberia, while the African L haplogroup mtDNA is almost exclusively in Africa except for later migrations. It's rather obvious that while Japheth had many sons, he must not have had very many daughters. Identifying the Semitic nations. Arphaxad with the IJK-SNP marker is the oldest son of Shem. Arphaxad is the ancestor of all Hebrews, Jews and Arabs, and it's not so easy telling the difference without careful study. As mentioned, J1P58 is the Cohen modal haplotype identifier, and other lineages of J1 can be Arabic as well. J2 is probably Judaic and Israelite, and the M172 designation is likely the descendants of the houses of Kings David and Solomon. The I1 and I2 haplogroups, of course, with the IJK-SNP marker are Abrahamic as well. If historical migrations are any indication, I1 is probably the tribe of Dan, naming everything Dan along the way, and I2 is probably the tribe of Asher according to their migration routes as far as northern Africa. The H paternal Y haplogroup is definitely the descendants of Elam. No doubt about that. The Elamite descendants migrated to India, where they are known today as none other than Elamo-Dravidians. Who would have known? Gypsies and Romani are also H descendants of Elam, and they also claim to be Judaic, and in fact they do have a significant amount of J2, second only to the majority H haplogroup in their populations as well. So much of human history is falling into place. It almost seems as if someone has been trying to keep genetic information a secret language that only academics can understand. Keeping in mind that the main paternal haplogroup designations are backwards, the G haplogroup is Assyrians descended from Ashur, who became their ancestor god, is as common among pagan nations. The descendants of Nimrod and Assyrians are closely linked. Together they are known as Sumerians. It's the same people of the same period. Sumerians are not prehistory. Abraham was a Sumerian from a Sumerian city called Ur. His father was a sculptor for Nimrod. Abraham had a run-in there with Nimrod because of the idols that his father made. One thing people must realize is that all the ancient civilizations existed at the same time. It's almost like academics hate the reality and hate the truth. The era means have the designation of F. The F means several different things. The CF marker means C, Nimrod, and F, which is FT. FGHIJKLMNOPQRS and T. The F is also its own lineage, in fact it's at least 2 or 3 lineages. It's very confusing. So, F can be the Aramean descendants of Aram and F can also be the Lydians descended from Lud. In fact, there are 2 separate F lineages that are not even connected to each other. That's it for the Semitic descendants of Shem. There's a lot of ancient history that we need to know to understand our genetics. I suppose this book is only scratching the surface of what we can learn from ancient human history. Identifying the Hamitic nations. Ham is identified as being the youngest son of Noah. Nimrod was probably the firstborn son of Cush, the oldest son of Ham considering the genetics. Nimrod's father and brothers migrated to Africa where they became the Cushites, having the genetic haplogroup markers of A and B. Nimrod with the C haplogroup is technically a Cushite as well, being the son of Cush, except that neither Nimrod nor his descendants ever went to Africa, and they had Semitic wives. Semitic is not just the descendants of Abraham. The next in line genetically, although it could be backwards from here, is Phut E1, who was the ancestor of the North Africans who were the first to be called Phoenicians in earlier times. Then it's the Canaanites E2 descended from, of all people, Canaan. Go figure. These are still the original ancient civilizations. They were the first ever recorded civilizations. The story of Canaan is sad. They did not go to Africa like they were supposed to as the others did, and they were largely dispersed or eliminated as a result. One of the surviving tribes, however, was called the Sinite tribe. They moved down into Sinai, named after them, and then they migrated all the way to the land of Sinim, also named after them. This land is otherwise known as Sino-China. Yet don't say. They are the only other Hamitic people in Asia, having the D paternal haplogroup, besides the descendants of Nimrod having the C paternal haplogroup. The truth is more interesting than fiction. The E3 haplogroup is the descendants of Mitzrayim, whose mother was said to be Egyptus. And now you know the rest of the story. The whole story is spelled out in DNA. This haplogroup is very large today since Mitzrayim had many sons in a great land with lots of room for expansion. It includes V12, V13, V32, V65, M81, M123 and other notable ancient groups. DNA doesn't lie, and it is very interesting when you know exactly what happened to everyone and where everyone came from. There are many surprises along the way. Each haplogroup has its own unique story. There's no reason to be afraid of learning all about all our ancestors. And there's more. Europeans are descended from Gomer, and they probably don't even know who that is. Gomer had 3 sons, so his descendants are divided up into 3 lineages. R1a is the descendants of Ashkenaz, R1b is that of Riphath, and R2 is the paternal Y chromosome haplogroup of the living descendants of Togarmah. In case you are wondering where all these ancient civilizations came from, they are the descendants of 16 lineages that are of the 16 grandsons of Noah. There is a record of these nations called the Table of Nations that lists the genealogies. You would think people would be interested in this information, but people are easily scared away from learning the truth about where we all came from. It's quite profound to realize that we are the survivors of human history. These 16 people are the ancestors of all of us, and we happen to have a record of all their names. Judaic people descended from Judah and other Israelites were spread all over the world historically, but especially to the north, the west, and the east. If you look where the J2 paternal haplogroup is today, it is north of the Levant, west of the Levant and east of the Levant. The J2 is found as far away as the land of Sinim among the Uyghur population, where the Sinite Canaanite tribe lived in Sino-China. Yes, the Uyghurs are Judaic. The descendants of the tribe of Dan were the first ones to wander away from Israel since they were shipbuilders of the Mediterranean. They named everything Dan everywhere they went into Europe. This means that they are the ones with the Semitic I1 paternal haplogroup. The I2 has all the migration routes of the tribe of Asher that was closely associated with the tribe of Dan, albeit with their own paternal haplogroup lineage. I1 and I2 are referred to as Germanic when they are in fact Semitic. That's just weird. Otherwise, everyone in Europe would be the descendants of Gomer, the guy they don't even know existed, and as stated previously, 95% of Western Europeans have Semitic maternal mitochondrial DNA. For whatever reason. Semitic is not just the descendants of Abraham. Otherwise, Europeans would look Asian as some Eastern Europeans do. Many Southeast Asians have features derived from the descendants of King Nimrod, CY haplogroup, and the Canaanite Sinite tribe, DY haplogroup, both of which are Hamitic in Asia. The C and D paternal haplogroups are also found throughout Mongolia all the way to Japan. The C haplogroup of course went all the way through North America to South America, where it remains to this day among the Warani, Wayu, and Kichwa tribes. They are the direct descendants of King Nimrod, the first king of the world. Imagine that. Now don't you want to know more about the history of humans? Again, this book is just barely scratching the surface of what can be known. We just can't be making up our own version of human history. We have to follow the historical records that we have. For example, I had designated Tubal as being the K paternal haplogroup as a prediction when I heard that the descendants of Tubal were among the first to live in what is now Italy. So, I went to find the DNA makeup of Italy today, and I found that 8% of the Y chromosome in central Italy today is K. I heard that the Medes moved into Europe, which I had designated as Q as a prediction, so I went to see the Y chromosome makeup of Europeans where the Medes were known to have been, and sure as day, the Q paternal Y haplogroup was there. I had designated F to cover both Lydians and Arameans as a prediction, so I looked carefully at the Simon's Genome Project diagram, and there are two separate distinct F lineages, so much so that there was another haplogroup lineage, H, between them. Everything works out perfectly. It has to, or else something is wrong. When considering the human haplogroup designations, we need to realize what we are looking at. It is the lineages of known human history going back to their origin. So what if it proves we are all descended from Noah? Is that a problem? The truth can't be the problem. We are the problem if we get in the way of the truth. What is there to be afraid of when the evidence is on your side? Be very afraid if the evidence is not on your side. As far as historical records are concerned, the Torah is very accurate as to what happened. It not only tells of the good events, but it records all the failures and losses as well, unlike many of the other historical accounts from the pagan nations around them. It places a high value on truthfulness. This is exactly what we are looking for when looking for answers to our questions. After all, it is the Cohen modal haplotype that identifies the lineages of Abraham. No other historical record was ever able to do anything like that. Dealing with all the disinformation. Now that we have been able to establish exactly where we all came from, there are still a lot of big-headed academics who think they know better than God, so to speak. Send them my way. Let's see if they can back up any of their baseless assumptions, assertions, speculations, conjectures, imaginations, confirmation biases, and childish fantasies. They seem to think people somehow jumped down out of the trees and began building megaliths. The dissimilarity between the Y chromosome of troglodytes and humans is very extreme. The greater diversity of the human haplogroups, both maternal and paternal, is in and near Mesopotamia, not Africa. As you move away from the cradle of civilization, the diversity of haplogroups thins out. In Africa, the paternal haplogroups are A, B, and E. That's it. And of the maternal haplogroups, it's only L. All the other haplogroups are outside of Africa. In Europe there is R and I. Wow! In the Americas there is Q and C. In Australia there is C and K. In Siberia there is N. Ooh. In Asia there is mostly O and some C and D. The big-headed academics make themselves look bad in their isolated little bubble that they made for themselves, high above and far removed from the common folk. Send them my way to see if they will stoop to talk to me. The main thing is not to be afraid to tell the truth with all the evidence on your side. We survived the global flood, and we survived all the wars of the ancient civilizations. Now all we have to do is survive the onslaught and mudslinging of academia. That's why we need the shield of faith and the facts to stop all the mud being thrown at us. Did I mention that the continents broke apart in the days of Peleg about 100 years after the global flood? Yes, absolutely. It's the reason there are glacial striations stamped like a giant seal in South America, Africa, India, and Australia going from south to north from when they were all still connected to Antarctica. It's the reason jaguars were separated from leopards. It's the reason greater grisons were separated from honey badgers, and it's the reason why all the animals and ecosystems instantly froze and or were buried by tsunamis in the Arctic regions of North America and Siberia. This is a subject for another booklet. The truth is often stranger than fiction, and we have these big-headed academics who always get in the way of learning in truth. The Torah says that the flood water covered the highest mountain by 15 cubits. How did they know that? Sauropods are aquatic and didn't have to be inside the ark. They conglomerated on the highest sandbars that were still underwater, and the water came up to their shoulders, 15 cubits. It's so simple when you come from the Amazon jungle. Duh. I like who I am. I don't hate my ancestors. I am an I1M253 descendant of Dan, Jacob, and Abraham. I am one of the lineages closely related to the Vikings that was traced back to the Northern Alps. They could have been a part of the Vikings, considering that I do also have a considerable amount of Scandinavian autosomal DNA. Eventually they ended up in Edinburgh, Scotland, where I was able to trace my paternal lineage back to. I do also have a Jewish great-grandfather somewhere, but don't tell anyone, it's a secret. And don't make fun of my nose. I am what I am, and I'm a survivor as all of you are. That could be another booklet too as far as that goes. In conclusion, there is a lot more work to be done in genetic lineages, of course. Some people are just too afraid to go there. This paralysis is holding people back from learning the reality of their origin. There is no reason to be afraid of the facts. Get some courage and face the facts. Stand up for the truth. You have the facts on your side. All this research I have done on my own, and I am far from the greatest scholar there ever was. Surely there are many people who can add to all the things that I have found. One more story. Remember the Warani in South America that are descended from Nimrod? They killed 5 missionaries, Christians who believed in the teaching of Abraham. It was like the story of Nimrod and Abraham all over again, where Nimrod tried to kill Abraham. One of the Warani tribal members who killed the missionaries ended up becoming a Christian himself, and he adopted the son of one of the missionaries that he killed because he said that the boy didn't have any jungle skills. This event had happened basically in what was then my short lifetime, and I heard about it when I was going to school in the Amazon jungle. This could explain my interest in genetics. I was the minority growing up. I was the one who was cursed at and laughed at as I walked alone on the streets. Somehow, I still like the Brazilian people, and they usually like me when I speak their language. I am very comfortable in any part of Brazil. Depending on the politics, I wouldn't mind living there. It's not foreign to me. Portugal isn't too bad either. I was contemplating remaining in Germany too, for that matter. A lot of my friends in the army and places were islanders from Guam, Samoa, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Philippines, Cuban, Mexican, etc. Anyway, I guess that's about it for right now.
Okay, looks like we have a lot of people here, but odeio, odeio vozes de computador. Yeah. Yeah, I have 2 books up now on Amazon Kindle. One is live, the other one will be live in a couple of days. Eu tenho que ir buscar comida. Minha esposa estava trabalhando até tarde. Se eu não comprar, ela vai tentar cozinhar. Ela trabalha muito duro. Trabalha muito duro. I was just thinking, I work muito duro 40 years. Muito duro. And now I'm trying to retire. But anyway, that's what it is. Yep. Okay, that's about it. Diana, greetings. Happy Christmas. Okay, we'll see everybody in a little bit. God bless. And I don't know how it turned out. I gotta check to see if it turned out. No. My wife just worked 13 hours, and if I don't go and buy food, she'll try to start cooking. She works too hard. There you go. All right. Then take it easy, and everybody take care. God bless everybody.